The Blackwood Mansion was said to be the safest place in New York. Armed security guards stood watch at every gate. Surveillance cameras covered every hallway. No one was allowed to step inside without the permission of the Mafia boss. But the danger did not come from outside. It came from inside the bedroom of a child who was young. Everything began with a sound Brianna had never heard before. Not crying, Lila never cried out loud. This was the sound of struggling, of impacts, of desperate gasping breaths spilling out from a room that should have been deep in sleep long ago. When Brianna opened the door, she froze where she stood. The child's blanket lay scattered across the floor. A teddy bear had toppled onto its side beside the bed, and sitting on the bed with Lila was the woman Brianna had never imagined would appear here at this hour, the Mafia boss's second wife, the child's stepmother. A white pillow was pressed tightly over Lila's small face. Serena's hands were not gentle. They were pushing down harder and harder still. Lila's tiny legs kicked weakly beneath the blanket. Serena's eyes held no warmth. They were ice cold, empty, as if she was not looking at a child at all, but staring at something she hated down to the bone. "What are you doing?" Brianna's voice tore through the night. The woman did not answer. She lifted the pillow, and before Brianna could even breathe with relief, Serena's hands clamped around Lila's little throat. The girl could not cry out. She had never been able to. Years of silence, years without a single word. And now even a plea for help was stolen from her. Brianna lunged forward in desperation, her whole body trembling. "Stop. You're going to kill her. He will hear it." But Serena only smiled, a slow smile so cold it made the skin crawl, a smile that did not belong in this child's room. "He will not hear," she whispered. "He is far away." And this girl, her grip tightened. She cannot speak, so how could she scream? Brianna grabbed Serena's arm and yanked hard, frantic with fear. Serena fell to one side, and in that moment, the thing no one expected happened. Lila opened her mouth, and for the first time in years, the little girl screamed. The scream split the night, the scream of years of silence, years of fear, years of pain buried alive. It echoed down the halls, waking the entire mansion, exposing what the Mafia boss could never be allowed to know. And when Damian Russo kicked open his daughter's door, when he saw the bruises stamped across Lila's neck, when he saw the pillow lying abandoned on the floor and his wife standing there with trembling hands, nothing in the Russo empire would ever be the same again. Stay with me until the end of the video because what the Mafia boss discovers in that room will make you question everything you ever believed about loyalty, motherhood, and the terrifying power of silence. If you feel this story touched your heart, please hit like and share it with the people who need to hear it. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next stories. Now, let us turn back time to the day Brianna Hale first set foot in the Russo Mansion. Earlier, Brianna Hale stood before the massive iron gates of the Russo Mansion, her heart beating out of rhythm inside her chest, her hands tightened around an old worn handbag, the only possession she had left after years of running from her past. She was young, yet her green eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had lived 100 years. The October wind tugged at her rough, tangled brown hair, cold as the memories she tried to bury. Earlier, a car crash stole her parents in a single stormy night. Brianna was young, sitting in the back seat, watching her mother and father die right in front of her. Unable to do anything, she was taken to St. Mary's orphanage where she learned the first lesson of her life. Silence was the only way to survive. Older children bullied her. Adults looked right past her, and Brianna grew up in the shadow of loneliness. She left the orphanage with empty hands and a heart full of scars. She worked every job she could just to stay alive, waiting tables, cleaning houses, babysitting, anything that could bring in a few dollars to get through the day. Then she met Garrett. He was handsome, sweet, and Brianna, naive, believed she had finally found someone who would love her. But that love quickly became hell. Years living with violence. Years being beaten whenever Garrett got drunk. Years hiding bruises beneath long sleeves. She escaped on a rainy night, carrying a few changes of clothes and a long scar across her back that no one ever saw. but fate still did not let her go. Her younger brother Ronan, the only family she had left, was diagnosed with leukemia. Brianna worked long hours a day, sold everything she owned, borrowed every dollar she could to pay the hospital bills. But in the end, Ronan still slipped away, leaving her with a debt and a heart completely shattered. That was why she was here, standing at the gates of the Russo Empire, accepting a job with a salary so high it felt unreal, a job no one else wanted. The gates opened slowly, and a middle-aged man approached. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit. His hair was threaded with gray. His face was stern, yet his eyes held a kindness Brianna rarely saw in anyone. "Miss Hale?" he asked, his voice low and warm. Brianna nodded. "I am Elias, the Russo family's butler. Please follow me." They walked along the stone path leading into the estate. Brianna lifted her gaze to the enormous building ahead of her, awe tightening in her throat. The Russo Mansion looked like a castle from another century, with towering white stone columns, stained glass windows that shimmered with color, and hundreds of rooms hidden behind cold gray walls. It was magnificent, lavish, but something about it made Brianna shiver. Beautiful, yes, but lifeless, like a decorated tomb. "Miss Hale," Elias said, and his voice suddenly dropped. "Before you meet the master, I need to tell you something." Brianna looked at him and waited. "The child you will be caring for," Elias said, and a flicker of sadness passed through his eyes. "The little girl is different." "Different how?" Brianna asked. Elias stopped and turned back toward her. "Lila, Mr. Damian's daughter, is young. She was a bright, talkative child until ago." Then she stopped. Not a single word for long years. The doctors call it selective mutism. She knows how to speak. The words are there, buried under a mountain of fear. Brianna felt her heart draw tight. "Is she mute?" she asked. "No." Elias shook his head. "She can speak, but she chooses not to, or she cannot. The doctors call it selective mutism, but He hesitated. "I think the child is afraid of something." He started walking again, leaving Brianna standing there with 1,000 questions racing through her mind. "Nannies before you quit," Elias added, his voice darker now, not because the work was difficult, but because they could not endure the silence. Elias led Brianna up to the second floor, along a long, hollow hallway where painted portraits seemed to watch her every step. At the end of the corridor stood a white door, completely different from the heavy oak doors throughout the mansion. Golden stars and a silver moon were stuck to it, as if someone had tried to turn this place into a fairy tale world, but the stars had faded, and the moon was peeling away in flakes. Elias stopped in front of the door and turned to Brianna, his expression difficult to read. "She is in here," he said softly. "Please be patient." Then he walked away, leaving Brianna alone before the silent door. Brianna drew in a deep breath, then gently pushed it open. The room unfolded before her, like another world. It was spacious, flooded with light from tall glass windows, and packed with toys. Dolls stood in neat rows on shelves. Stuffed bears were piled high in a corner. A wooden rocking horse waited beside the window, and there were hundreds of other toys, more than Brianna could count. It was the kind of room any child would dream of, but something was wrong. Brianna felt it at once. This room was cold, not in temperature, but in feeling. The toys lay motionless, as if they had never been touched. There was no laughter, no playful shouting, no sign of life. This was not a child's room. This was a prison decorated with toys. And in the farthest corner near the window, Brianna saw her. Lila sat on the floor with her back to the door, her head bowed over a blank sheet of paper. Her golden hair spilled forward, hiding her face, and her tiny hand moved a colored pencil across the page. She did not turn around. She did not react as if Brianna did not exist. "Hello," Brianna said, keeping her voice as gentle as she could. "My name is Brianna. I will be here to take care of you from now on." No response. Lila kept drawing, the pencil scratching softly against the paper. Brianna stepped closer, careful not to make any loud sound. "What are you drawing? Can I see?" Silence. only the pencil and the wind moving past the window. Brianna stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. She remembered what Elias had said. Nannies before her had quit. They could not endure the silence. But Brianna was not like them. Brianna had lived in silence her entire life. She knew silence was not always rejection. Sometimes it was the only way to protect yourself. Instead of continuing to talk, Brianna chose to sit down. She sat away from Lila. Not too close to feel threatening, not too far to be ignored. She said nothing. She asked nothing. She simply sat there quiet like a presence that demanded nothing at all. Time passed. Lila kept drawing, but Brianna noticed the child's pencil had begun to slow. Then, suddenly, Lila stopped. Her head tilted slightly as if she were listening for something, and then slowly, carefully, she turned her head. Brianna held her breath as she saw Lila's face for the first time. The little girl was beautiful. Big blue eyes like two clear lakes, porcelain, pale skin, small, delicate lips. But those eyes did not hold the innocence of a child. They looked older, guarded, filled with fear, carefully hidden. Lila stared at Brianna as if trying to read her, trying to figure out who she was and what she wanted. That look made Brianna think of herself. When she was an orphan at St. Mary's, the look of a child who had learned that trusting adults was dangerous. Brianna did not speak. She only offered a small smile, one that asked for nothing in return. Then she looked down at the paper Lila had been drawing on, and her smile went still. The picture was not what a child should be drawing. It was a large house colored in deep black. Inside the house was a tiny figure curled up in a corner, and in the window, staring in from outside, was a pair of eyes colored blood red, unnaturally large, fixed on the child inside. A chill ran straight down Brianna's spine. This was not the picture of imagination. This was the picture of fear. Real fear. Lila looked at Brianna once more, then turned back and kept drawing. She picked up the black pencil and began adding a hand, a large hand with long fingers, reaching toward the small, curled-up child in the corner of the house. Brianna sat there, her heart pounding hard, and wondered what kind of place she had stepped into. Brianna was still sitting beside Lila, trying to make sense of the meaning behind that dark drawing, when the bedroom door suddenly opened. The sound of high heels tapped against the wooden floor in a steady rhythm. Slow, deliberate, full of authority. Brianna turned her head and saw a woman step inside. She was tall and slender, with sleek black hair falling to her shoulders and flawless white skin. The red dress she wore hugged her perfect figure, and jewelry glittered at her throat, her ears, her wrists. She was beautiful, beautiful enough to make Brianna feel like a stain in the middle of this dazzling room. But something in that beauty kept Brianna from admiring it. It was cold, sharp, like a blade plated in gold. "Ah, you must be the new nanny," the woman said, her voice sweet while her eyes swept over Brianna as if she were judging a cheap object. "I am Serena Vale, Damian's wife." Brianna rose and lowered her head politely. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Brianna Hale." Serena did not return the greeting. She walked past Brianna as if Brianna did not exist, moving toward where Lila sat on the floor. "Lila, sweetheart," Serena said, her voice suddenly turning so sugary it sounded false. "Mommy came to see you. Did you miss me?" Brianna watched closely. Lila did not turn around. The child's small body went rigid, her shoulders drawing inward, as if she were trying to become a stone. The pencil in her hand stopped moving. Serena stood there for a moment, waiting for a response. When none came, her expression shifted just slightly. For a single heartbeat, Brianna saw something flash in Serena's eyes. Not disappointment, not sadness, but disgust, quickly hidden. "This girl," Serena said, turning to Brianna, her smile still in place while her eyes were ice cold. "She never reacts. You will get used to it, or you will quit like the others." Then she walked out, the sound of her heels fading down the hallway. Brianna watched her go, suspicion tightening in her chest. Something was wrong here. She did not know what it was, but the survival instinct honed by years of pain was whispering a warning. That woman was dangerous. Later, Elias came to escort Brianna down to the first floor to meet the master of the house. They passed through countless corridors and staircases before stopping at a heavy oak door. Elias knocked, and a low, rough male voice came from inside. "Come in." Damian Russo's office was as large as the entire apartment Brianna had once rented. Books lined the walls. A massive wooden desk sat in the center, and behind that desk sat a man, Damian Russo. Brianna had heard plenty about him, about the shadow empire he ran, about enemies who vanished without a trace, about the absolute power he held, but nothing could prepare her for standing in front of him. Damian was tall with broad shoulders and a body that looked carved from stone. His black hair was slightly long, slicked back from his face, revealing sharp angles, a square jaw, and eyes as dark as bottomless pits. He did not need to say a word, just sitting there. He radiated a kind of authority that made Brianna want to step backward. "You are Brianna Hale," Damian said. It was not a question. It was a statement. "Yes, sir." "Sit." Brianna sat in the chair across from the desk, trying to stay calm, even as her heart pounded wildly. Damian studied her for a moment, his dark eyes seeming to read every thought inside her head. Then he pushed a thick folder toward her. "This is my daughter's medical file," he said. "You will read it carefully." Brianna opened the folder, pages packed with text, complicated medical terms, endless psychological evaluations, and on the first page, a diagnosis printed in bold. Selective mutism. "My daughter does not speak," Damian continued, his tone still cold. Yet Brianna sensed something shift, a softening so slight it was almost impossible to notice. "The doctors say it is selective mutism. She is capable of speaking, but she chooses not to, or she cannot speak in certain situations." He paused, his jaw tightening. Lila's birth mother died giving birth to her. Lila has never known what a mother is. Sometimes I wonder. He hesitated, and for a brief moment pain flickered in those dark eyes. Sometimes I wonder if she is punishing this world for that. Brianna stayed silent, unsure what to say. For the first time, she saw the human being beneath the Mafia boss, a father suffering because he could not understand his daughter. A powerful man who could control an entire city but could not make his child open her mouth and say a single word. "I do not need you to cure her," Damian said, his voice turning cold again. "I only need you to keep her safe." "Can you do that?" Brianna looked straight into those dark eyes. "I can, sir." She did not know how far that promise would be tested. She did not know that keeping Lila safe would not mean protecting her from the world outside. It would mean protecting her from the woman inside this very mansion. The first week passed slowly, like a dream that never ended. Brianna woke early every morning, prepared breakfast for Lila, then helped her bathe, change her clothes, and begin another long day inside a room overflowing with toys. Yet empty of laughter, Lila did not speak. Not a single word. She moved like a small ghost through her own room, avoiding touch, avoiding eye contact. When Brianna brought food, Lila would wait until Brianna turned away before she touched the plate. When Brianna tried to brush her hair, Lila would go stiff like a small animal waiting for pain to come down on her. The child did not fight back. She did not scream. She did not cry. There was only silence, a silence more frightening than any sob. Brianna did not force her. She had learned from her own life that forcing anything only made it worse. Instead, she chose to stay close. Every morning, she sat in the corner of the room from Lila and simply existed there. She demanded nothing. She expected nothing. She only sat quiet like a patient stone waiting for the water to pass. Lila kept drawing dark pictures. Brianna saw more of them during that first week. Dark houses, eyes red as blood, black hands reaching out from the shadows, and again, the image of a tiny child curled in a corner, alone, with no one coming to save them. Brianna did not ask about the drawings. She knew Lila was not ready, but Brianna memorized every detail, every color, every trembling line of the child's pencil. Something was happening to this little girl, something terrible, and Brianna was determined to find out what it was. Brianna began to notice a strange pattern. Every afternoon, the familiar click of heels would sound outside the hallway. Serena came to visit her stepdaughter. At first, Brianna assumed it was normal, a mother visiting a child. What could be strange about that? But then she began to pay attention. Each time those heels appeared, Lila stopped whatever she was doing. It did not matter whether she was drawing, reading, or eating, she stopped instantly. Her small shoulders went tight. Her breathing turned quick and shallow. Her blue eyes widened with terror, locked on the door as if she were waiting for a monster to walk in, and Lila's drawings grew darker. Brianna had believed that once Lila started trusting her, the pictures would brighten. For a while that had been true. The sun began to appear. Bright color began to slip into the corners of the page. But now the darkness was returning. Stronger, more frightening. Blood-red eyes showed up in every drawing, watching from windows, from corners, from beneath the bed, the eyes of nightmares, the eyes of a hunter, and the black hands. Black hands with long, crooked fingers, reaching out of the dark, trying to touch the tiny child curled in the corner of the picture. Brianna gathered the drawings and hid them beneath her own mattress. She did not know if they could ever serve as proof, but she knew they mattered. They were Lila's voice, the voice she was too afraid to speak out loud. One night, when the entire mansion had fallen asleep, Brianna slipped up to Lila's room to check on her. She stood outside the door and listened, and she heard it, crying, quiet, strangled sobs, as if the one crying was doing everything possible not to make a sound. Lila was crying alone in the dark. Brianna wanted to rush in, to hold her, to tell her everything would be all right, but she knew she could not promise that. Not while she still did not know who the enemy truly was. Not while she still had no proof. She stood there, her back against the cold wall, listening to the sobs of a child carrying something terrible that no one else could see, and she swore to herself she would find the truth. She would protect Lila, no matter who she had to face. Brianna began her own investigation. Every night after making sure Lila was asleep, she would slip out and stand in a shadowed corner of the hallway watching. She knew she was taking a reckless risk. In the Russo world, curious people rarely lived long enough to regret it, but Brianna had no other choice. She could not close her eyes while a child was being tortured right in front of her. On the night, Brianna finally saw what she had been waiting for. The clock struck late when the familiar click of heels echoed through the dark corridor. Serena wearing a white silk nightgown. She moved towards Lila's room. No bodyguards followed her. No one saw her. Only darkness and silence. Brianna hid behind a marble statue, holding her breath, her heart pounding out of control. She watched Serena stop at Lila's door, her head tilting slightly, as if listening. Then the door opened and Serena disappeared inside. Brianna waited. Time passed. Then she heard it, crying. Lila's muffled, strangled sobs, smothered as if someone were covering her mouth. Brianna wanted to rush in. She wanted to drag Serena out by force. She wanted to protect Lila at any cost, but reason caught her and held her back. If she stormed in now, Serena would deny everything. There would be no proof, no witnesses, and the word of a poor nanny meant nothing against the Mafia boss's wife. Brianna needed evidence, evidence that could not be denied. Later, Serena stepped out of the room, her face cold as ice, her eyes lit with something poisonous. She walked down the hallway, her heels ringing through the night, and vanished into the dark. Brianna waited to be sure Serena was gone, then slipped into Lila's room. Lila lay curled into herself on the bed. The blanket pulled up to her chin, her whole body trembling. Her eyes were squeezed shut, but tears still ran into the pillow. Brianna sat beside her and gently laid a hand on Lila's hair. "I am here," she whispered. "Lila, I am here now." Lila opened her eyes, and Brianna saw the horror inside that blue gaze, the horror of a child who had endured too much for too long alone. The next day, when Lila went outside into the garden with Elias, Brianna stayed behind to clean the room. She knew what she was looking for, and she found it. Under Lila's bed, hidden behind a loose board, was a stack of drawings. Pictures Lila had kept secret, not wanting anyone to see. Brianna pulled them out, and the blood in her veins seemed to turn to ice. These drawings were different from the ones she had seen before. They did not only show vague red eyes and black hands. They showed a woman with long black hair, wearing a red dress with eyes colored blood red. That woman was hurting a child. In one drawing, she was yanking the child by the hair. In another, she was pinching the child's arm. In yet another, the child was trapped in a dark room, and the woman stood outside the door, laughing. Serena? This was Serena. Brianna did not need anyone to confirm it. The long black hair, the red dress, Serena Vale. Lila had drawn the truth she was too afraid to speak out loud. Brianna slid the drawings into her pocket, determined to find a way to use them, but she did not know she had been watched. When she turned around, Serena was standing in the doorway, her dark eyes fixed on Brianna like a predator. "What are you looking for, Brianna?" Serena asked, her voice sweet, but carrying the threat of death beneath it. Brianna forced herself to stay calm. "I'm just cleaning, ma'am." Serena stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. The sound of it shutting was like a trap snapping closed. "You know, Brianna," Serena said slowly, "I really do not like curious people. Curious people tend to have accidents." Brianna said nothing. She knew any word she offered could be turned against her. "You are only a nanny," Serena continued, moving closer. "A poor nanny. No family, no one who cares. If you disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even bother to look for you?" She stopped right in front of Brianna, her face only inches away, her warm breath brushing Brianna's skin. "Remember your place, Brianna. You're here to work, not to stick your nose into other people's business. If you want to keep living, learn to close your eyes and keep your mouth shut." Then Serena turned and walked out, leaving Brianna standing there with her heart racing and the drawings weighing heavy in her pocket. Brianna knew she was facing a choice: stay silent and live, or speak up and die. But when she thought of Lila, of those trusting blue eyes, of the small hand holding hers, of the whispered words, "Brianna, stay." Okay. She could not leave. She could not abandon Lila to face the devil alone. Even if it cost her everything, she would stay. After the confrontation in Serena's private room, Brianna began to feel something changing in the mansion. The air grew heavier, as if a storm were gathering on the horizon, waiting for the right moment to break. And Brianna knew the storm had a name: Serena Vale. That morning, Damian announced he had to leave on an urgent business trip to Chicago. An important meeting with partners, he explained. As Brianna happened to pass through the breakfast room, Serena sat beside her husband, her face arranged into false worry, her hand clasped around Damian's. "I'm so worried, darling." "Is this trip dangerous?" Serena asked, her voice so sweet it made Brianna feel sick. Damian patted his wife's hand. "It is only business. I will be back soon." But Brianna saw Serena's eyes when Damian turned away. Those dark eyes flashed with triumph like a cat watching its rival step straight into a trap. Brianna knew Serena had arranged this trip. She wanted Damian far away, and that frightened Brianna more than anything. That afternoon, while Brianna was playing with Lila in her room, Elias came in with news that made Brianna's blood turn cold. "The security camera in Lila's room has malfunctioned," he said, his voice low and filled with concern. "The technicians say it will take time to repair." Brianna looked up to the corner of the ceiling where the small camera usually blinked red. Now it was dark, useless, like an eye that had been stabbed blind. This was not coincidence. Damian gone, the camera broken, events on the same day. Serena was clearing the path for something. All day long, Brianna could not take her eyes off Lila. She stayed beside the child every second, watching every shadow that passed the hallway, listening for every sound that moved through the mansion. Lila seemed to sense something wrong as well. She clung to Brianna more than usual, her blue eyes darting again and again toward the door, as if waiting for someone to appear.
"Brianna," Lila whispered late in the afternoon, her voice trembling. Lila scared. Brianna pulled her into her arms, trying to comfort her, even though fear was tightening in her own throat. "I am here. I will not let anyone hurt you." Night fell. Brianna put Lila to bed as usual. She read to her until Lila drifted to sleep, then stayed a long while longer, watching the angelic face in the soft glow of the nightlight. Brianna did not want to leave. Her instincts were screaming, warning her that something terrible was coming. She decided she would not return to her own room. Instead, she took a blanket and sat down in the corner of the hallway, just outside Lila's door. If anyone tried to enter, Brianna would know. The mansion sank into silence. The clock struck late. Then later, Brianna sat in the dark, her back against the cold wall, her eyes fixed on Lila's door. She was so tired, her eyes felt full of sand, but she did not dare sleep, not tonight. And then Brianna heard it. Heels. That familiar click coming from the stairwell, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of a hunting animal closing in on its prey. Brianna held her breath and pressed herself tighter against the wall. Hiding inside the darkness, she saw Serena appear at the end of the hallway, her silhouette thrown across the wall by pale moonlight spilling in through a window. Serena was moving toward Lila's room. She wore a white nightgown, her black hair falling to her shoulders, drifting down the corridor like a ghost, and in her hand she carried a white pillow. Brianna felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. She knew what Serena intended to do. She knew tonight was the night Serena had chosen to act. Serena stopped at Lila's door, her head tilting slightly, as if listening. Then she opened the door and stepped inside. Brianna rose, her legs threatening to give out beneath her. She had to do something. She had to stop this. But if she charged in right now, what would Serena do? She might kill Lila instantly before Brianna could intervene. Then Brianna heard it, struggling. Sounds, desperate, ragged breaths spilling out from the room. There was no time left to think. Brianna sprinted to Lila's door and threw it open, and what she saw made the blood in her body turn to stone. Serena was sitting on Lila's bed, a white pillow pressed tight over the child's face. Lila's tiny legs kicked weakly beneath the blanket, growing weaker with every passing second. Brianna burst into the room like a storm. She did not have time to think. She did not have time to weigh consequences. Her instinct to protect Lila swallowed her whole, driving her legs faster than they had ever moved. She grabbed Serena by the shoulders and yanked hard, pulling the woman off Lila's bed. Serena hit the floor. The pillow flew from her hands, and at last Lila's ragged breathing filled the room. She was alive. Lila was alive. "You dare?" Serena snarled from the floor, her voice twisted with fury. "You dare interfere in my business?" Brianna held Lila tight and backed into the corner of the room, her eyes never leaving Serena. She knew the real fight was only beginning. Serena was not the kind of woman who accepted defeat. Serena rose slowly, like a snake coiling before it struck. Her black hair spilled over her face. Her eyes gleamed with something unhinged beneath the pale moonlight. She no longer looked human. She looked like a devil finally showing its true shape. "Who do you think you are?" Serena demanded, her voice shaking with rage. "A poor nanny no one cares about, standing between me and what I want?" Brianna did not answer. She only pulled Lila closer, shielding the small body with her own. Lila trembled in her arms, her breathing still fast, but she clung to Brianna as if she were clinging to life itself. "I warned you," Serena went on, stepping closer. "I gave you a chance to stay silent and live. But you did not listen." Serena's hand slipped behind her back. When it came forward again, steel flashed under the moon. A box cutter, a small blade, but razor sharp, sharp enough to leave wounds that could kill. Brianna felt her blood turn cold. She had no weapon, no way to defend herself, only bare hands, and the decision to protect Lila at any cost. "Now the plan has to change a little," Serena said, her voice turning terrifyingly calm.
Instead of a peaceful death in her sleep, Lila will die because a crazed nanny attacked her. And you, Brianna, you will take your own life after realizing what you have done. She laughed, a cold sound in the night. Perfect, isn't it? No witnesses, no one left to tell the truth. Serena lunged, the blade aimed straight for Brianna. Brianna twisted on instinct, shielding Lila, and she felt the blade slice deep into her left shoulder. Pain exploded like fire, and hot blood soaked through her nightgown. But Brianna did not let go of Lila, even when the pain made her want to scream. She held on, using her own back as a shield for every blow. Serena pulled the blade free and raised it again. Brianna fell to the floor. Lila still locked in her arms. Blood dripped from Brianna's shoulder onto the wooden boards, pooling into a dark red stain. Brianna looked up and saw Serena lifting the blade high, her dark eyes blazing with madness. This was the moment she would die. Brianna knew it. She could not fight a woman with a weapon, not while she was wounded, not while she had to protect a child. But she did not regret it. If she had to die, she would die protecting Lila. She would die as someone who had lived according to her conscience. Brianna closed her eyes, held Lila tighter, and waited for the final strike. "Don't be scared," she whispered into Lila's ear, her voice trembling with pain and fear. "I love you. I will always protect you." But the strike never came. Instead, the unimaginable happened, Lila. The child who had gone years without speaking a word suddenly lifted her head, and she screamed. The scream tore through the night, echoing through the mansion, waking every hidden corner of the house. Not a scream of fear finally breaking loose, a scream of years of silence, years of endurance, years of pain at last exploding into sound. Serena froze, the blade suspended in midair. She had not expected this. She had believed Lila would stay silent forever, that no one would hear, that no one would come. But she was wrong. Lila's scream woke the entire mansion. Lights snapped on in nearby rooms, footsteps thundered in the hallway, and the most terrifying sound of all for Serena was the heavy, commanding set of steps racing up the stairs. Damian, he was back. Serena heard Damian's footsteps drawing closer, and something inside her shattered. The perfect mask she had worn for years fell away, revealing the true face of a woman pushed to the edge of madness. She stopped trying to hide, stopped playing the perfect wife, the loving stepmother. All those layers dissolved, and only the raw, terrifying truth remained. "Do you have any idea what I have endured?" Serena asked, her voice trembling, her dark eyes lit with a fevered, deranged glow. The knife was still in her hand, but she was no longer trying to strike. She was talking now, spilling everything she had kept locked inside for so long. Brianna held Lila tighter, blood still flowing from the wound in her shoulder. But she did not dare move. She knew Serena was balanced on the edge of insanity, and even the smallest motion could send her over. "Years," Serena went on, her voice breaking as if she were crying, though no tears fell. "Years I've lived in this house, slept in that bed, been Damian Russo's wife. And do you know what? I have never truly been his wife." She turned toward Lila, hatred twisting her face. "Because of this child, this damned child." Serena began pacing the room, her steps unsteady like someone drunk. "Do you know how Damian looks at her? Like she is his whole world, like the sun rises and sets for her alone. And me?" She laughed, a bitter sound sharp enough to cut. "I am only decoration. A beautiful woman to attend parties, to lie in his bed, to fill the empty space his first wife left behind." Serena stopped at the window. Moonlight washed over her face, highlighting features that were both beautiful and frightening. "But I could never fill that space because Amelia is still here." She turned back and pointed the knife towards Lila. "She's in every corner of this house. In every photograph, every object, every story, the servants whisper to each other. And most of all, she's in that child." Serena stepped closer, her eyes fixed on Lila as if she were staring at an enemy. Every time Damian looks at Lila, he sees Amelia. Those blue eyes, that blonde hair. Everything is just like her mother. And me? Her voice caught. I disappear. I do not exist. I'm only a faint shadow beside a woman who was already dead. Brianna listened, horror filling her. She began to understand. Serena was not only jealous of Lila, she was jealous of someone who had died. A woman Serena could never defeat because the dead remain perfect forever. I tried. Serena continued, her voice rising, growing more frantic. I tried to love her, tried to be her mother, tried to make Damian look at me the way he looked at Amelia, but she never accepted me. She looked at me with her mother's eyes, and she hated me. She hated me because I'm not Amelia. Damian's footsteps reached the end of the hallway. Only seconds now, but Serena no longer cared. She had lost control completely. So I decided, Serena said, and her voice turned terrifyingly calm. If I cannot defeat Amelia, I will remove everything that reminds him of her, starting with this child. She stared at Lila, then turned her gaze to Brianna. The plan was simple. Lila would die in her sleep. Sudden infant death syndrome, the doctors would call it. Damian would suffer, and I would be there to comfort him. In the end, he would have only me. Only me. Serena turned to Brianna, her eyes cold as ice. But you ruined everything. So now the plan must change. She spoke as if reading from a script already memorized. You, a crazed nanny with a troubled past. You attacked Lila. I tried to stop you, but I was too late. Lila dies. You kill yourself from guilt. And I become the poor wife. The woman who tried to save her husband's daughter and failed. She laughed, wild and echoing through the room. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The bedroom door flew open. Damian Russo stood there, his face drained of color, his dark eyes taking in the scene with a horror he could not hide. And Serena, with the knife still in her hand and her confession hanging in the air, stood frozen in the center of the room, realizing it was over. Damian Russo had heard many sounds in his life. Gunfire and wars over territory, the begging of enemies before they vanished for good, the cries of his first wife as she gave birth to Lila and then released her final breath in his arms. But no sound could compare to his daughter's voice in this moment. Daddy, one word, only one. It shattered the years Damian believed his daughter had lost her voice forever. Years of burying her voice in the dark because of the trauma she endured. Years in which he had missed what was truly happening beneath his own roof. Damian turned to Lila, and for the first time in years, he truly looked at his child. Not through the glass of endless work, not with the pity reserved for a disabled little girl. He looked with the eyes of a father trying to understand, and he saw it. He saw Lila lying in Brianna's arms, not because she was being restrained, but because she was seeking protection. Lila's tiny hands clutched Brianna's nightgown, not in panic, but as if Brianna were the only lifeline in a storm. Lila's blue eyes did not look at Brianna with the terror they held for Serena. They looked at Brianna with trust, absolute trust. Serena sensed the shift in Damian at once. She stepped forward, trying to pull his attention back to her. Damian, don't listen to her. She's in shock. She's been manipulated by Brianna. She be quiet, Damian said, his voice low and cold as ice. Serena froze, her mouth open, but no sound coming out. In years as Damian's wife, she had never heard him speak to her like that. It was the voice he saved for enemies who were about to be dealt with. Damian moved toward Lila slowly, as if afraid of frightening her. He knelt in front of her, his dark eyes level with his daughter's blue ones. It was the closest they had been in years. Lila, Damian said, and his voice trembled in a way his men would never believe possible. Can you tell Daddy what happened? Lila looked at her father, her small lips shaking. She had been silent for years, not because she could not speak, but because she was afraid. Afraid of Serena, afraid of punishment, afraid no one would believe her. But now, looking into her father's eyes, seeing real pain and real worry there, something shifted inside her. She was not afraid anymore. She had Brianna.
Brianna had protected her. Brianna had not run. Brianna had been willing to die for her. And now maybe her father would believe her too. Lila opened her mouth, and the words she spoke changed everything. "Serena hurts me," Lila said, her voice still rough from not being used, but clear and steady. "Always. Serena hits me. Serena pinches me. Serena locks me in the closet when no one is looking." Tears began to slip down Lila's cheeks, but she did not stop. Serena says, "If I talk, Serena will kill me." Serena says, "No one will believe me." Serena says, "I'm useless, a burden, something everyone hates." Damian felt as if someone were tearing his heart apart piece by piece. His daughter, the child he loved more than his own life, had endured all of this under his roof, and he had not known, he had not seen. He had been too busy with business, with the empire, with meaningless battles for power. While his daughter was being tortured right in front of him, but Brianna came, Lila continued, and her voice warmed when she spoke of the nanny. "Brianna doesn't make me talk. Brianna just stays. Brianna reads to me. Brianna draws with me. Brianna tells me about Ronan, her brother, who died." Lila turned to Brianna, her blue eyes full of gratitude. "Brianna loves me. Brianna saves me. Tonight, Serena wanted to kill me, but Brianna saved me." She looked back at her father, her voice small, but brave. "Daddy believed me. Daddy believed Brianna." Damian did not answer with words. Instead, he reached out and touched Lila's cheek, the first time in years. And the most powerful mafia boss in New York, the man the city feared, began to cry. Tears slid down his sharp face and fell onto the wooden floor, mixing with Brianna's blood and the pain of years kept hidden. "I believe you," Damian whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I didn't protect you." He pulled Lila into his arms, holding her as if he might lose her again. And Lila, for the first time in years, hugged her father back. She cried in his arms. Finally safe, Serena stood there watching it all, her face white as a ghost. She knew it was over. Damian gently placed Lila back into Brianna's arms, then stood. His face changed completely. The pain, the collapse of a father who had just discovered a horrifying truth, was gone. In its place was the coldness of the mafia boss, the man who had built an empire with blood and iron, the man who never forgave betrayal. He pulled out his phone and made a short call. "Dr. Ellis, I need you at the mansion immediately, and bring all your forensic examination equipment." Serena stared at Damian, searching for even a sliver of hope. "Damian, what are you doing? You cannot believe the words of a child and a crazy nanny over your own wife." "I am your wife." Damian only looked at her, his dark eyes empty of all feeling. "How stupid do you think I am, Serena?" The question stopped her cold. She looked at him, not understanding. Damian stepped closer, each footfall heavy in the silent room. "You think I built this empire by trusting everyone around me? You think I survived how many assassination attempts? How many betrayals? On luck alone." He stopped in front of her, his face only inches from hers. "I suspected you since Eliza disappeared, but you had erased every trail with terrifying precision. I hired Brianna as a final test, hoping her bond with Lila would force you to make a mistake. I never imagined you would go as far as attempted murder while I was away." "I had you watched," Damian continued, his voice cold as steel. "I put hidden cameras in places you never expected. And I kept a backup of every camera feed in this house, including the ones you thought were broken." He pulled out his phone again, opened a video, and held it up for Serena to see. On the screen, Serena stood in Lila's room, a pillow in her hands, pressing it down over the child's face. The date and timestamp were clear in the corner of the image. Tonight, only minutes ago, the camera in Lila's room was never broken. Damian said, "You only destroyed the main camera. But I have a backup camera. I always have a backup plan." Serena staggered back, her legs threatening to give out. Everything she had calculated, every perfect story she had built, collapsed in an instant. The doorbell rang.
A few minutes later, Elias led a middle-aged man in a white coat into the room. Dr. Nathan Ellis, the most renowned pediatric forensic physician in New York, the one Damian trusted completely. "Examine my daughter," Damian ordered. "I need to know every injury on her body." "Doctor." Ellis stepped to Lila and Brianna and examined the child with the careful precision of a specialist. He checked Lila's throat where the bruising from Serena's hands was still clearly visible. He checked her arms, legs, back, and the places clothing usually concealed. With each discovery, Damian's face darkened further. "Mr. Russo, doctor." Ellis said at last, his voice low and grave. "The child has multiple injuries at different stages of healing. Some bruises are old, possibly from time ago. Some are newer, and the bruising to the throat is the most recent, from only minutes ago." He looked Damian straight in the eye. "These are not accidental injuries. These are injuries caused by deliberate violence. Someone has been abusing this child for a long time." Damian closed his eyes, struggling to contain the fury boiling inside him. His daughter had been harmed, maybe for years, and he had not known. He had trusted Serena, left her alone with Lila, believed she was a good stepmother. "No!" Serena screamed, her voice wild. "This is a lie. Brianna did all of this. She hurt Lila, and now she is blaming me." She rushed toward Damian and grabbed his shirt. "Damian, I am your wife. I love you. I would never hurt Lila." But Damian only looked at her, his dark eyes empty of all feeling. "Do you know why I came home early tonight?" he asked, his voice cold as ice. The main camera was indeed disabled, but the hidden backup system triggered a silent alert to my phone, but the signal was delayed due to the storm. I saw the shadow on my screen only as I reached the front door. I ran as I have never run before, every second feeling like an eternity of failure. Serena froze, every excuse dying in her throat. Her mask had fallen completely. No more fake tears, no more sweet voice, only the true face of an evil woman exposed in the light. And she knew in Damian Russo's world there was no forgiveness for anyone who dared lay a hand on his family. The room sank into a heavy silence. Damian stood across from Serena, his face stripped of expression, no anger, no pain, not even disgust, only the cold emptiness of a man who had made a decision that could not be reversed. Serena stared at her husband, searching for the smallest hint of mercy in those deep black eyes. She found nothing, only darkness, the darkness of death waiting. "Damian," Serena said, her voice shaking. "We can talk. I can explain." "I disappear," Damian cut her off, his voice cold as ice. 2 words, only 2, but they carried the weight of a death sentence. Brianna, still holding Lila in the corner, felt a shiver race up her spine. She had heard Elias speak of people who disappeared from Damian Russo's world. They were never found. Not ever. "You cannot do this," Serena said, panic rising fast. "I am your wife. I am Serena Vale. You cannot treat me like some ordinary criminal." Damian did not answer. He only stood there looking at her with eyes that no longer recognized the woman he had married. Serena changed tactics. She dropped to her knees at Damian's feet, tears spilling out, her hands gripping his legs like a drowning woman clinging to the only thing that might keep her above water. "Damian, please, I will change. I will do anything you want. I will love Lila like my own child. I swear it. I swear it to you." She sobbed openly, tears and mucus mixing together. The face that had once been beautiful now twisted by desperation. "Think about what we had. The nights you held me in your arms. The things you said to me. You loved me once. You loved me." Damian still said nothing. His silence was more terrifying than any words. Serena realized begging would not work. She stood, her eyes red and swollen, and something in her shifted completely. No more tears, no more pleading, only cruelty and hatred. "You think you can get rid of me that easily?" Serena screamed. "I know all your secrets. I know about the dirty deals. I know about the people you have killed. If you lay a hand on me, I will tell the police everything. I will destroy your empire." Damian looked at her, and for the first time, a faint smile touched his mouth, not a happy smile. The smile of a predator watching prey with nowhere left to run. "You think you are the first person to threaten me, Serena?" he asked, his tone calm in a way that was terrifying. "You think the ones who tried to bring me down before are still out there somewhere?" Serena backed away, her face turning paper white. She realized she had chosen the wrong enemy. Damian Russo was not the foolish husband she could manipulate. He was a wolf wearing a man's skin, and she had made him angry. Damian lifted a hand as if they had been waiting for that signal. The bedroom door opened. 3 men stepped inside, dressed in black suits, their faces blank. Brianna recognized them. They were Damian's closest guards, the ones Elias had said only appeared when someone needed to disappear. "No!" Serena screamed, darting toward the window. But 2 of the men grabbed her, wrenched her arms behind her back, and locked her in place. "Damian, you cannot do this. I am your wife. I am your wife." Serena screamed and thrashed, fighting against the iron grip of those men. It was useless. They dragged her toward the door, and Serena kept screaming, her voice echoing down the dark hallway. Damian stood there, watching his wife being taken away, his face untouched by emotion. When Serena's screams finally vanished into the night, he turned toward Brianna and Lila. "She will never come back," Damian said, his voice tired. "The official story is that she ran off with a lover. No one will ask further questions." Brianna nodded and said nothing. She understood. In Damian Russo's world, disappear did not mean moving to another city or starting over somewhere new. It meant ceasing to exist forever. She felt no pity for Serena, not after everything that woman had done to Lila, but she felt no joy either, only a strange, quiet relief, as if a massive shadow had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Lila lay in Brianna's arms, her blue eyes closed at last. For the first time in years, she fell asleep in peace. Later, the Russo Mansion no longer felt like a cold place. Sunlight poured through the tall glass windows, laying a warm golden glow over everything. Children's laughter rang through the hallways, laughter that earlier no one believed they would ever hear. Lila, now older, was running through the garden, her blonde hair flying in the wind, her blue eyes bright with happiness. She was no longer the child who curled into corners drawing dark pictures. She had come back to life like a flower that finally reached sunlight after years in the shade. Brianna stood on the second-floor balcony, watching Lila play, her heart filled with peace. Ago, she had been a poor nanny with a debt crushing her shoulders. Now she was the official legal guardian of Lila Russo, recognized by law, trusted completely by Damian. Her debt had been paid off long ago. Damian never spoke of it. One day, Brianna simply received a notice from the bank saying the entire loan had been paid in full. Brianna knew it was Damian's way of saying thank you, the way a man did when he was not good at speaking his feelings out loud. Lila began to talk more, not only with Brianna, like before, but with Damian too. Every evening when Damian came home from work, Lila would run out to meet him, calling, "Daddy?" in her clear, bright voice. And the most powerful mafia boss in New York, the man who made the entire city afraid, would kneel down, gather his daughter into his arms, and smile. A smile no one would have believed possible earlier. Damian had changed. He no longer drowned himself in work the way he once had. He made time for Lila. He read to her before bed, took her to the park on weekends, learned how to be a real father. He was still the boss, still ran his empire with an iron hand. But when he stepped into the mansion, he became someone else. A father who loved his daughter more than anything. The relationship between Brianna and Damian changed too. Not romantic love, the kind found in fairy tales, but deep respect, wordless gratitude, and a rare bond built from that fateful night. Damian looked at Brianna as someone who had saved what was most precious to him. And Brianna looked at Damian as a father who had finally awakened and learned how to love his child the right way. One afternoon, Lila ran to Brianna with a sheet of paper in her hands. Her blue eyes shone with excitement. "Brianna, I drew something for you." She handed Brianna the picture, and Brianna felt tears rise as she looked at it. The drawing no longer held dark houses. No blood-red eyes, no black hands reaching out of the shadows. Instead, there was a bright yellow house, its windows thrown open wide to the light. In front of it stood three people holding hands, a tall man with black hair, a woman with brown hair, and between them a little girl with blonde hair. Above the picture, in a child's uneven, crooked letters, Lila had written one word: family. Brianna pulled Lila into her arms, tears sliding down her cheeks. This was everything she had ever dreamed of. Not money, not status, but belonging somewhere. Being loved, being needed. And she had found it in the one place she never expected, in the mansion of a mafia boss, beside a little girl who had gone years without speaking a single word. Damian stepped out onto the balcony and watched them holding each other. He said nothing. He only stood there, a faint smile resting on his mouth. And in that moment, beneath the blazing gold of sunset, they were a family, not a family by blood, a family made from love, sacrifice, and courage. This story teaches us that sometimes the hero is not the most powerful person or the richest. Sometimes the hero is simply an ordinary person who dares to stand up for what is right, even when danger is close. Brianna had no money, no power, but she had a brave heart and unconditional love. And sometimes that is all it takes to change someone's life. This story also reminds us that silence is not always golden. Sometimes silence is the loudest cry for help. And listening, truly listening, is the most precious gift we can give another human being. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, tap like and share so we can spread meaningful messages every day. How did this story make you feel? Did it bring anything in your real life to mind? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We truly want to hear what is deepest in your heart. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the video. Wishing everyone watching this video good health and a life that feels joyful and peaceful each day. Goodbye, and see you again in the next.